Good morning and welcome to the Hold Up to Hallelujah podcast. I'm your host, Jesse. I hope this episode brings healing and the encouragement that you need today. But most importantly, I pray that it brings you closer to Jesus. Let's get started.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for taking time to come down here.
Thank you for having me.
I know you had to drive in the middle of nowhere to get down here.
Beautiful drive, though. It was so good.
Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and open with a word of prayer.
Okay.
Father, we thank you for this opportunity that you have given us to be able to come together and to be able to share stories and to be able to just give a platform for my dear friend here to be able to tell his story and to be able to just encourage and inspire so many other people. Father, help us to use your words that are just flowing through us just to reach as many people as possible. Father, we thank you so much for the time and the space to be able to do this. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
For everyone listening, this is my friend Anthony. We haven't known each other very long, but I feel like it is one of those connections that as soon as we connected, we were just able to...
Instant.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
instant and things just flowed. And so I'm really grateful that you were willing to share your testimony. So we start every podcast off with a small devotional. And so this one is going to come from John 15. Which I think is really cool because we just got back from a camp, Hope Hills Camp in Alabama, where the goal of Hope Hills Camp is to serve families, kids, anybody experiencing disability, and they take their entire family and just love on them and serve them for a week. And it really was an incredible encounter and an experience for me and Jersey. We both went. And one of the things there that came up a lot was a lack of connection. And that lack of connection, I think for most of them was for to other people. But it kind of led me back to who am I connecting to? And what does that look like in my own life? And so it kind of led me to this passage about connectedness. And I actually heard a devotional from a fellow chaplain who's in the military, Chaplain Fisher, and she did a phenomenal job breaking this passage down for me and just explaining things in ways that I'd never really understood or heard before or really maybe gave much thought to. And so it really has changed the way that I view my connection with God and what that looks like. So we'll just jump into it. John chapter 15 verse 1, I am the true vine and my Father is the vine dresser. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And when he says, I am the true vine, it's interesting that he uses that word because prior to this, in the Old Testament, the belief was that Israel was the vine. And so it's kind of revolutionary to what he's telling them now. He's like, you thought that you were the vine, and now I'm telling you that I am the true vine. And this metaphor with this vine, it also, there would have been grapevines all around ancient Israel. So it would have been something that people could have easily understood and got, maybe even a little bit more than we see now. We don't see a whole lot of grapevines here in southern West Virginia, but, we do see apple trees, and it's kind of the same principle of all of that. Every branch in me that does not bear fruit, he takes away. And what's cool about that word takes away is it actually can mean lift up. And so when we think about that, we think about the Father lifting up people who are struggling. Yeah. When if you have an apple tree or you have a grapevine that's struggling, you lift up the branches, you try to save them, you try to encourage them, you try to get them to grow the way they need to grow. And so I think sometimes we take that as a automatic, you're cut off, but that's not necessarily what it is. It's he's lifting you up and he's loving on you and giving you the care to try to take care of you, which kind of reminds me of Jonah that we talked about on this podcast before, because it's every time we run from God, he just keeps pursuing us. It's this idea of no matter how far we go, he's just pursuing us. So it's even when we're struggling, he's still lifting us up and trying to get us, trying to pursue us. And every branch that bears fruit, he prunes, that it may bear more fruit. And I love that because that word prunes can also mean cleans. And if you leave vines to grow or you leave things to grow unpruned, then they have a lot of unproductive growth. And I think about that in our own life and about how we can look at something and be oh, okay, that's great, but we weren't going at all towards where we were going. We were taking steps, but they're not to where we need to be going. If we don't have a goal, we're taking steps and we're going in all these different directions. We're not focused on what we need to be focused on. You are already clean because of the word which I have spoken to you, which kind of pulls back from John 13:10, where he's talking about like he had washed the disciples' feet, and he's telling them that they're already clean. Well, at least most of them, because he knew Judas was going to betray him, and so that he was not clean. Abide in me, and I in you. As the branch cannot bear fruit of itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. And I love this because there are 39 references to fruit in the Gospels that Jesus is speaking about and teaching about. And 8 of them come in this passage like alone. Now that's like, depending on what version you have, that may fluctuate just a little bit. But I feel like there's something to be said about this fruit, and trying to figure out what that means, I think, is important to this passage. But he says, abide in me and I in you. And I love this because it kind of reminds me of this story that I heard, or analogy, I guess you could say, a few years ago. What happens, we use our phones for everything. They literally can do everything. Like, they can write business plans, like they can communicate with people, they can connect us on social media, like they can connect us to people that we're not even close to, like we can follow people, we can use them for maps. Like, there's so many things that we can use them for. But that's only if we charge them every day.
Yes.
If we don't charge them, then they're dead. They're useless. And that's kind of what I feel like he's saying here. Like, we have to connect with him daily.
Absolutely.
Like, this should be like a continual connecting to him. Like, if we're not connecting with him, we're not really good for anything. Like, we're failing. And it says, I am the vine, you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. Or without me, you can do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is cast out as a branch and is withered, and they gather them and throw them into the fire, and they are burned. I love this because he gives us job descriptions. Like, he says, he is the vine, the Father is the vine dresser, so he's like the gardener. We are the branches, and if we are connected to the vine, then fruit is going to flow, because what is flowing through the vine flows through the branches and into the fruit. And if we're not, then we have a new job description, and we're going to be firewood. Like, it's kind of like this, like, breaking it down in a very, like, simple way. Like, hey, I don't want you to miss this. And I love that. I love that he does that for me, because I don't know about you, but sometimes I struggle.
Yeah.
And so I really like that he, like, broke it down, like, so much simpler for us. But then it says, if you abide in me and my words abide in you, and you will ask what you desire, and it shall be done for you. By this my Father is glorified, that you bear much fruit, so you will be my disciples. And I wanted to kind of break this down a little bit more, because I think that fruit is important because it's linked to identity. So a lot of times when we're talking about fruit, it's linked to this idea of identity. We take on the identity of what we are connected to. So if we're connected to the vine, then we've taken on the identity, that our true identity, from Jesus. He is the vine, and we're connected to him. But also, I think that goes the opposite way. If we're connected to our occupation, then our priorities have gotten out of line.
Yeah.
And we are more connected with what we do than to who we come from, like where our identity really comes from. So our identity should come from Christ, 100%.
Absolutely.
And then a lot of times I think our occupation is connected to our identity in our minds, and that's just not how it should be. Now, our occupation may be how we carry out some things, but it's not where our identity comes from. And then fruit is linked to purpose. It can be how you, when you think about purpose, I think we get confused a lot about, like, purpose and calling, and what you're called to do, when we use those words interchangeably. But your purpose is to glorify God. It actually says that in here. Like, that is your purpose, is to glorify God, and to carry out the Great Commission, and to do the things that God has told you to do. And that is wonderful. But we get confused, and we're like, okay, well, do we all have the same purpose? Yeah, we all have the same purpose, but how we carry that purpose out is going to look different based on your skill set or my skill set. You don't want me leading worship, because people would be running.
Yeah.
They would not be staying for worship, because it would sound like, I don't know, screeching cats or something. But, I'll use my skill set in this particular way, which then typically is what we call, like, a calling. And so that may change, like, over time. Like, right now I'm using my occupation as a way to fulfill my calling. But, when I retire, it's not like God's done with me.
Yeah.
I'm just withered away and have no purpose anymore. No, I still have the same purpose, to glorify God. But how I choose to, or how he chooses, rather, it really should be how it is. How he chooses to use me after that may change, but still to give him glory.
Yeah.
And then fruit is linked to multiplication. It's an output from you. And you know what I think about this is like the fruit's not for us. It's not really about us. Like we are a branch. We're like the vessel. We're the branch. The good stuff flows from the vine through the branch to the fruit. But when you look at a vine, like if you look at an apple tree, you don't look at the branch and be like, wow, that's a nice branch.
Yeah.
You know, you look at the apple. Like
Right.
the fruit is what catches your eye. When you look at the apple tree, you're like, wow, what good fruit. You know, like I want to eat an apple, you know, let me get some caramel or some peanut butter. Like, you know, you think about that, but you're not like moving the apple away to look at the branch.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you know, when we start prioritizing things in our life and we realize it's not about us, then we see like the bigger plan that like God has in still like a smaller way for us because, you know, we can't see all that he sees. But what flows through the vine flows through the branches and then flows into the fruit. And then in the fruit, there's seeds, right?
Yes.
And those seeds are going to be sowed back into the ground and the process will be repeated. So it's like this idea of multiplication. So I just think that that's really cool. And I love the way that this is like broken down for us. And I love that he makes it really simple for us, you know, like how do we have a faith that's bigger than what we face? You know, what do we do when God doesn't do the things that we want him to do or what we think he should have done,
Yeah.
you know, or when we look at our life and we're like, this isn't the way it was supposed to be. You know, how do you have this faith that's bigger than any obstacle that you come? You know, and for me, it's simple. Like he says, abide in me. All we've got to do is cling to him, you know?
Yeah.
We've got to abide in him. And so what does that look like in our everyday life? Like abiding in him is living in his word, you know, letting his words live in us and carrying that out. And just this, you know, we have things in our culture that tell us that spiritual maturity, you know, what does that look like? Well, it's close proximity to Jesus. And it's backwards from what culture tells us because we raise our kids up to be what? Independent.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want 40-year-old kids who, you know,
They're
are
not-
capable of doing things and aren't doing them. You know, it's different if they're not capable of doing the things, but we're trying to teach them to be independent in whatever skill sets they have, or abilities that they have, or challenges that they have. We're trying to teach them to be independent. And so for us to understand that spiritual maturity is complete and total dependence on God and being in close proximity to him is kind of different for us to understand.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like to lead into your testimony. Is there a time, or maybe you take us back to the beginning of your testimony, or, you know, where maybe you thought, maybe you first started abiding in him, or that what that looked like for you, or I don't know if you want to start back at the beginning of your story. Your shirt just caught my eye because I thought it was a North Face shirt, and because it looks like that, and then it was like the sober life. So I really like that. Very
you.
cool. Very
Thank you.
cool. And so I just, you know, if you want to just jump in with your testimony and
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was raised in a family with an abusive alcoholic father. And it was tough because it was always, everybody was walking on eggshells. You know, nobody could do anything right. And my mom and my brother took the brunt of it. They were the ones that were abused the most. And I had a gift of making people laugh, so I would use my humor to try to take the edge off of everything. And, you know, it didn't always work, but I used it as much as I could. And I always thought, like, I never want to be like that man.
right.
I never want to be that person. And then drinking his beers, I started getting that feeling of, oh, wow, this is why people drink, because it makes them feel good.
Right.
You know, you can do anything. And my dad went to rehab when I was 12. And when he got out, he was just a mean, sober guy. He didn't work a program. He said that the recovery and where we were living wasn't good. And so it was just like, he was still just a mean person. And then my parents divorced, and it was like, at first I was devastated. And then once we like separated, I lived with my mom and my sister and my brother. It was peace. And it was like, oh my gosh, like this is what a normal person lives like,
Right.
or normal kids live like. And I was raised in a Catholic church. I went to Sunday school. I was an altar boy. My dad never went to church with us. He just told us we had to go. You know, and I always tried to be good, but I always wanted to hang with the cool kids, and the cool kids were always doing the bad stuff.
Right.
And that's when, like, I knew that, like, we went on vacation one time. My dad and my uncles gave me some Long Island iced teas, and I was like, oh wow, this is it. And every chance I got, I would drink. I started smoking weed when I was 10.
Wow.
And then all through high school, every weekend was a party. And every summer was just a party. And I thought that was it. I was very good at entertaining people. I could dance. I was always like the life of the party. So I loved the attention. And come to find out, I was actually addicted to the attention too, just as much as I was the drinking. And then in high school, my best friend went to prison for his meth use and robbing houses. And I despised it until I tried it. And then I was in love. Or so I thought I was in love with it. Because it was just like, it took over my life. And my family was like, look, you gotta have to figure something out. So I always resorted back to drinking and smoking weed. Because that was always the thing that made me feel like me. Or so I thought that was me. You know, I always had to have some kind of substance, you know, in my system. And that's the way I felt normal. And I went on for years doing drugs and drinking and smoking weed. And I mean, I was homeless at one point. I lived in my car for a while. Then I met my kid's mom, and we had twin daughters. And then 2 years later, we had my baby daughter. And then my buddy got out of prison, and I went to hang out with him, and I moved back down to Phoenix because me and my kid's mom weren't getting along. Because we met in a bar, and we started doing drugs together, and that never ends well. So, but when my friend got out of prison, we were partying pretty hard. He was a tattoo artist, and I was in a business of it was a sex shop. And so we just partied all the time. That's all we did. And we ended up meeting up with this guy, partied with him, and I had to leave the next morning to go to court. And I told my buddy we were leaving, and he was like, no. Well, I ended up leaving, and some stuff happened to him. He ended up calling me and ended up telling me he was going to murder this guy. And so that was a point where I was like, okay, I'm on my way back. I'll be there in a couple hours. And he's like, no, stay with your kids, visit. And he ended up murdering the guy. And now he's doing 25 to life. And I blame myself a lot because what if I was there? You know? And then looking back on it, that was the first time, like, God was like, no, you don't need to be there.
Right.
And I could be doing life in prison right now. And so when I finally did talk to him about it, and I actually expressed to him how I felt and the way that I blame myself for it, he was like, no, absolutely not. He's like, I'm the one that made the decision. And he kind of helped me get past that of blaming myself. But still, there's always times that, like, you get those thoughts that creep back in your mind, and you're like, oh my gosh, what if, you know, could play the what if game. And I hate living in the past, you know, because of all the wrongs that I did. And so then he went to prison. I moved back to Seligman with my mom to help my grandfather. He was dying of cancer from mesothelioma. And my drinking just got worse. I went to a halfway house, tried to do better, but I was always doing it for the wrong reasons. That was because I was trying to get visits with my kids, but I couldn't do it because I was drinking, and the drinking would lead to drug use. And so it was just a whirlwind of bad. And every time, you know, I'd start drinking, I'd want to go get high. And so I ended up staying sober for about 60 days. And then my dad, in his pill addiction, started losing everything. So I moved up there, back in with him to try to help him pay his bills. and my mom had given me some money to help pay the bills, and I went and bought a bunch of dope, and I started selling dope to pay the bills. And I did that for like 4 or 5 months, and then I ended up getting pulled over with dope, and I ended up doing 7.5 years in Arizona Department of Corrections. And I didn't learn my lesson because I got into prison. Anytime they had hooch, I would buy it. Anytime there was weed, I would buy it. I did meth a couple times in there, which I told myself I would never do it again.
Right.
And here I was in prison for meth, doing meth, and tried heroin for my first time. I told myself that I wasn't a junkie, so I wasn't gonna like it, but it was just, I always had to have something just to, I don't know what it is about the addict mind, but it's just like to numb the pain, just to escape, being stuck in a cell for hours and hours, and it's like, what do we do? Oh, there's free heroin, well, let's do it.
Right.
Oh, we have weed, let's smoke it. And as time went on, like, all I did was obsessed over drinking. Like, I can't wait to get out. I'm gonna drink. I can't wait to get out. And so when I did, upon release, they told me that, he said, my parole officer said, I can't tell a grown man that he can't drink a beer. So I took that as I can drink as much as I want, and ended up going to a bar, which I didn't want to go to. And I got in a fight, of course. Bars never got along because I'm smaller. For whatever reason, guys always want to fight. And these guys tried to jump me and my buddy and his wife. And I hit a guy in the mouth with a Corona bottle and busted every tooth on the left side of his mouth out. And then split his mouth all the way to his ear. And I was on parole. So immediately went back to prison. And I had disfigurement charges, assault with a deadly weapon. There was a list of charges, and ended up coming out good on it because of the fact that the bouncers were drinking. There was just a bunch of stuff, like the tapes disappeared because of all the bad stuff that would have happened to the bar and the owner. And so I was released, charges were dismissed, and that's still something that I always get scared about, like going into like prison ministry. Like the first thing they're like, oh yeah, we'll just run a quick warrant check on you, and I was like, oh no, like what if they pop up, but then after that I ended up getting back out on parole. I couldn't drink, and I obsessed over it until I could drink. And then when I moved out here to West Virginia through the job that I got when I got out of prison, I didn't know anybody out here, so I was just like, stay at home and drink and, have a little fun. Started getting to know people. The drinking got out of hand. And it got really, really bad to where it was like every morning I couldn't start my day without drinking anywhere from 2 to 6 beers. And then a tall can at lunch. And then as soon as I left work, stopped at the gas station, tall can, and then drinking the rest of the night. Well, of course, going to bars, you meet people. Started finding people with coke, so then that started becoming a thing. And I was a production manager at this place I was working at, and I was hiring people, giving them drug tests, and here I am doing coke in the bathroom, drinking beers, and giving drug tests,
Right.
And ended up drinking at work one day, taking shots, and decided that I was done for the day. So I left, and my bosses called me and were like, what are you doing? And I was like, look, I got a problem. And it hit me hard, because the drinking was fun until it wasn't.
Right.
I was always in the bars, life of the party, like I could have fun. I would always be dancing and, having a good time. And then it was just like, it just stopped. And it wasn't, I was miserable. I would sit at home and I was depressed. I was like, what's the point? What am I even doing? And that was my wake up call. And they said, if you don't get in some kind of counseling and meetings or treatment or something, you're going to lose your job. And, I'm 2,000 miles away from my closest family member. Well, I have a brother in New York, but like everything I know is in Arizona. And so I was like, man, I got to get this figured out. And so I made some calls, ended up going to treatment in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, to this place, Serenity Oaks, and it was amazing. And that's where one of the counselors had said, you know, like, if you're not completely honest about in your program, then this isn't going to work for you. Well, in the times that I tried to get sober in my early 20s, I always looked at the steps and I was like, there's no way I'm doing that one. I'm not doing that one, you know, and I was like picking and choosing.
Right.
And it's like, they're in order for a reason, and you have to work them. You know, the first one's the only one you have to work 100%, and then you do the rest to the best of your ability. And I knew right then that I had to be honest. And
That's good.
and there was something in my life that I had never told anybody in my life, you know, and I was like, I'm gonna have to say this. And my therapist walked through, and this is like all God right here. It was crazy because the counselor said that, and it just like came over me, and I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to say this. And then my counselor walked in and was like, we have a therapy session in 10 minutes. And I was like, good, because I have something to tell you. And he's like, well, we only have 30 minutes. You know, if it needs to wait, I said, if it waits, it's not going to happen.
Right.
And so when I went into the therapy session, I was fidgety, and I was like, he was like, what is wrong with you? Are you okay? And I was like, I was molested when I was a kid, you know, and it just blurted out. And it was just because, like, I knew that if I didn't say it, it was never going to get said. And I wanted to get sober. I wanted a better life, you know, and the only way to do it was to be 100% honest. Well, then here it is. And that was something I was going to take to the grave with me, you know. And then I asked him if I ever had to say it again. He said no. But then we had a men's therapy or men's class a couple nights later, and I ended up saying it in that class. And he looked at me and he was like proud, like he shook his head and he was like, and then it was never going to be a part of my story. But that during that class, 2 other guys were like, I was molested when I was a kid and I've never told anybody in my life. And I was like, if me sharing something that traumatic that happened to me and can help somebody else that might be thinking like, this is the one thing I'm never going to tell anybody, but it can save them, like it's done for me so far, like then that's a part of my story.
That's
and
good.
and it's just, and like I told you, like there's family members that don't know, you know, and that's just because of the devastation that it would create in the family. But it's still a part of my story. Like my recovery and church families know, but not my family. And then I got introduced to, so I went to AA for like 2 years. They started talking about going to the prisons. And I was like, and everybody looked at me like, hey, and I was like, yeah, right. Like, why would I go back?
Like I got out.
Yes, like I don't want to freely go back in.
Right.
And then one of my buddies, and I think he did it to get me, and I've kind of hinted to him and asked him, but he's never really said. But he was like, hey, I'm going to do the prison thing. And I was like, and me and him were really, really close. And I was like, let me call my sponsor. I think I might need to do that. And so I called my sponsor, and he was like, yes. And he's like, I thought that you should. He's like, but I didn't want to be the one to be like, hey, you should go to the prison. And it's been the best thing I've ever done. And then I got introduced to Celebrate Recovery. And because I called my sponsor right around the time I started the prisons, and I was like, I think something's wrong. And he's like, what do you mean something's wrong? And I was like, I'm like stagnant. And he's like, welcome back to normal life. He's like, you're not creating a bunch of chaos in your life and you're having to pick up the pieces. He's like, this is the way normal people live. And I was like, oh my gosh, I thought I was doing something wrong or something was up. And he's like, no, he's like, that's just the way, welcome back. And I was like, okay. But then I was still missing something.
Right.
And that was a closer relationship to God. And there's God again. Jen messages me and was like, hey, you should come to Celebrate Recovery. And I was like, how many people are there? Immediately, you know, 'cause, you know, the anxiety and stuff. Like before when I was drinking, I would walk in a room of strangers and I'd be fine. But once I like got sober and I was like, I walk into a room and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm not the lively, like I'm still have that like ability, but not the way I used to.
Right.
And that's a struggle because I lived that life for so long that I didn't know who I was. Sometimes I still struggle with who I am. Like, how am I normally?
Right.
You know, I'm 3.5 years sober and I'm still like, what is the Anthony?
Like, what's your new normal?
Yeah, like
what's baseline?
Yeah, exactly. And so I told her, I was like, okay, I'll go on one condition, that you come out to the parking lot and walk in with me.
Is that why she started doing that? Because
Yes.
she says that she'll put that on Facebook, and she'll say, "I'll come out to the parking lot and get you."
I think so, because I told her, I said, the only way I'm going in there is if you come out to the parking lot and walk me in. And she was like, I got you.
How cool is that?
It is. And so when I walked in, it was like immediate, like the people that came up to me, they were just like so welcoming. And it was just like, okay, I think this is where it's at. And then I started going to, I kept going to Celebrate Recovery, and then Jen got baptized. And I've been going to Lifeline Church ever since. You know, it's a Pentecostal church. I'm a Catholic. No, I'm not baptized in that church, but I still go because I'm there to hear the word.
Right.
And it has gotten me such a closer connection. And the people there. After I would be going for a couple months, Amanda was like, okay, you need to go to Next Steps. And I was like, what is that? And she's like, that's your next step. You need to be a part of the, you know, you come, you should be a part of. And I was like, okay. So I go in and I do this class and I take this personality test. And I was like, okay, so now what? And then they call me and they're like, hey, we want you to be a greeter at church. And I was like, you want me to be the face people see when they walk up? And they're like, yeah, that's what we want you to do. And I was like, why? You know, because again, we were talking earlier before this about like people seeing stuff in you that you don't see. You know, I don't see the things in me that people see, and it's hard to hear. We were talking about that, compliments, and you know, people saying like, oh, I see God working in your life, and I'm like, where? Like, I don't see it, you know. And now I'm at a point where like I'm starting to see the stuff happening, and it's all because I'm trying to do the next right thing. Of course, I'm not perfect,
Right.
but how I used to be and who I am today is like two completely different people. And even my buddy that's doing the 25 to life, you know, he was bad on drugs. And then when I got out of treatment, because I kind of even fell off writing him and everything. And when I got out of treatment and I started writing him again and told him that I had gotten sober, and he was like, bro, that's what I need to do.
That's awesome.
And so he's been on a path to sobriety. You know, he is taking Suboxone and stuff, but he's trying to get himself off of that because he wants an actual clean date. But it's crazy because I looked up to him, and now he looks up to me. So we look up to each other, and we like talk about being positive and talking about what God does in our lives. And it's crazy because like the people who we were versus what we are now is like, people would be like, yeah, right, you guys are lying, you're faking, you know, just because we were always like, one of our teachers in high school told both of us, you guys will both end up in prison. And I was like, what is it? That's kind of rude to say. But he saw something in us that, you know, the path we were headed down. But now we can use all of that to help other people, which is why the prison ministries are so big in my life. Like, I go to 3 different prison meetings. I can go up to 3 different prison meetings a week. And I tell them all, these are my favorite meetings because they're the realest. And, you know, I might not say anything that like is life changing to somebody, but being there and just opening that door for them to show them that, hey, even like you're in prison now, and I commend people in prison for taking that step to sobriety, because it is tough. You know, like I said, I wanted that escape. I wanted to not feel present in there. So I commend them for taking that step. And, but I want them to know that, you know, no matter how we lived before, there is a life after that. You know, and living in a sober life, you know, my whole journey started with getting sober. I've always believed in God. I just had a resentment towards him because I thought that he had put me where I was.
That's good.
Because I was too my judgment was too clouded to realize that, like, no, you're making these decisions that's taking you down this path.
Right.
Like, God has a path for me, but I strayed off of it because I wanted to take over and I wanted to do my will and not his will. And so to be able to, like, show the people in the prisons and stuff that, like, hey, there's a life after this, you know, and it's all about just showing up, participating, and, you know, being a part of a program that, you know, that's where it all started for me. You know, that's where my closer connection came to God, was through the programs. It led me back into church, you know. I would go to church in prison, but it was just to get out of the cell. You know, I would go pray and stuff, but my prayers never meant anything. And the first prayer that I prayed in treatment, and I seen God working, was, please remove this obsession. And I have thoughts of drinking. I see people drinking and I'm like, well, they're lucky. They can have one drink and walk away.
Right.
I start with one, and there's no telling how many is going to follow. And so being able to know that and have that thought creep into my mind and just immediately know that, well, I can't do that.
Right.
And the one thing that I'm still working on is, which I know they said it in church today, even the pastor was talking about, is giving everything over, turning everything over, going to God for everything. You know, because it's like I can handle this. I'll take care of this, you know. I'll just do this. You know.
We talked about that this morning in church too.
Yeah, and it is crazy because, like, it's like, it's good for me, especially, to know that, like, even the pastors struggle. I know they're not perfect, but, like, even they struggle with giving it all to God. You know, and it's like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one, you know. And thankfully they have the courage to say it in public, that they still struggle with that.
Well, and it's kind of like whenever you struggle with something like that, like, you just want to fix the problem.
Yes.
Like, it's like we're fixers, and somebody tells us the problem, we just want to fix it. So we want to do more, we want to do better, we want to accomplish more tasks, and, like, really we're missing the whole thing, because the answer that I would have is nothing to the answer that God would have, you know, and his plan is so much more elaborate and beautiful. And my plan was like, let's take care of this one immediate thing right here, you know, and then the next thing. And it's just, when you look at it with, like, different eyes, it's like, God, why was I trying to manufacture a solution when the solution is yours? Like, you've had it this whole time. All I had to do was give it over to you. Yes,
and like you said, seeing it with different eyes, like being in addiction and then being sober, like in addiction it was that instant gratification. And now I'm like, that instant gratification, like, patience is tough, because I want it now, and taking it, making it happen myself, no matter how I had to do it, versus giving it to God, being patient and waiting. And it's tough because, you know, the things that we want in life, we just want the best for our kids, for our grandkids, our parents, you know, our siblings, everybody in our family and our friends. But we can't make things happen.
Well, and patience is hard too right now in life and where we're at, because we can have everything literally at our fingertips in no time. You know, if you want something, you just get on Amazon and it's here in 2 days.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty impressive. You know, we live out in the middle of nowhere, so we don't, like, run to Walmart every day. But I do like that Amazon. Like, Amazon does 2 days, they can get here in the middle of nowhere. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty instant for us out here.
Yeah.
But, you know, we can literally have anything. And, you know, if you live in town, I mean, you can order something and get it the same day, you know? Like, it's just crazy because things are so accessible.
They are.
You know, with our phones, social media, Amazon, I mean, you can just have things so quick that it's hard to develop sometimes that patience or virtue, that patience fruit.
Yes, and especially in the growth in, like, my life, you know, talking about, like, what I want to do going forward, you know. Where I'm at now is just it's like a fill-in for now
Mm-hmm.
because of what I want to pursue.
Mm-hmm.
And the pursuing it, like people have told me for years, like, oh, you should, you should do a food truck or this and that. And it's like, no, because that'll take the fun out of it. The more I started doing
Mm-hmm.
and cooking, the more I wanted it. And the more that's just like, that's my goal.
Mm-hmm.
Because looking back on my life, I never had a goal. I just worked just to pay the bills.
Right.
Well, I want to do something that's fun, that I can help other people. I could grow a business to help people in my situation,
Mm-hmm.
in recovery, getting out of prison. Because it's tough to find jobs that actually pay,
Right.
and not, and be happy about it.
Mm-hmm.
Going to work every day and just to pay the bills
It's awful.
it is. And we have to sacrifice sometimes to do it, because for the longest time I didn't know what I
Right.
wanted. And it took all of this time, I'm 45 now, and it took all of this time and me moving out to West Virginia to figure out what I want to do, And it's like, if you would have said, okay, when you're in your 40s, you're going to move to West Virginia and you're going to get sober and you're going to be involved in, like, you're going to be a leader at Celebrate Recovery. You're going to be involved at the church and you're going to be on a podcast talking, and I'd have been like, yeah, right.
But isn't it cool how God he just like shows us like the next step and not the whole picture
Yes.
at one time? Because I really do believe we would 100% run 100 miles an hour towards him or towards that plan, and we would leave him out of it. We'd
And
be
ruin-
bypassing
yeah.
it and ruining it, or we'd run 100 miles an hour in the opposite direction because we'd be scared.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing too, is like, I was talking earlier about not knowing who I am. And I know who I am, but I
Right.
don't know some of the, like, how to act
Right.
sometimes even,
Right.
because trying to be a better person, I still have my downfalls. My language can be bad at times, and it's something that I try to work on. And I said this in one of my Celebrate Recovery groups. I was like, it was easier to quit drinking and doing drugs than it is to quit cussing.
Wow.
But it's tough because sometimes, and I've always been like this, whenever I said, like, I'm going to quit drinking or I'm going to slow down I'm going to quit smoking cigarettes, I'd do it more. And it's the same with my language, but if that's what I have to work on,
That's a lot better.
a lot better
Yeah.
than the drugs and alcohol.
Do you think that that's because you can avoid, like, a little bit more, maybe you can't avoid it all the time, but you could avoid places where people are drinking or things like that, but you can't really avoid people cussing,
Yeah.
because it's all around us.
It is.
It's
And-
like in everything we watch.
Right. And like they say, like in when you get sober in like AA and NA, it's, change your playgrounds and your playmates.
Yeah.
But like you said, stuff like that,
It's hard to...
it's hard to get away from, and and it's still in the music. Yes, I could change my music, and I have, like, I still do listen to some stuff, but like the little playlist that I have for when I have my food truck, of course it's all clean music. But it's all like the old school funk, the disco, and like Mexican music.
I love that you have a playlist ready.
Yes.
Like, ready to go.
Yes.
That's exciting.
Because I want it to be an experience. I don't
Yeah.
want you to just walk up and be like, okay, let me
Yeah.
get this. I want it to be fun and energetic, because that's who I am. Like, I'm a fun, energetic person, and sometimes I feel like I sell cars, but I feel like I don't have it's not my business.
Right.
So,
Well, and that's kind of like that. I can't remember exactly where I heard this from, and so I might be misquoting it a little bit, but it's like you should operate in like your top gifts 90% of the time.
yeah.
And it's like when we start operating outside of that 90%, like if we're doing something that we don't love 90% of the time we're only doing our gifts like 10% of the time.
Oh,
Then it's like we're
yeah.
so out of balance that we're miserable.
Yeah.
But we really should operate in our gifts 90% of the time. Like 10% is like growth and like things we're working on and like maybe things we don't really love, but things we have to do the other 90%. But 90% should be, and I can't remember who I stole that from, but
That's
it's
good.
not original. I stole it from someone.
That's good.
I just can't remember who.
And it's the thing too is like having to deal with people. You know, like I can be energetic and be, you know, on a positive, having a great day, and then one person come in and be completely mean. And it's like people come in just to be disrespectful. Like there's people out there that just do that.
Right.
And it's like, why? Like I'm having such a good day. Don't ruin my day.
Yeah, like why are you coming at me like that?
Yes. And so, and that's where having my own business and being able to do my thing and having that, like, setting the standard of like fun
Right.
and positivity, but also to show
good.
people that it doesn't matter where you're at in your life, there is a way out.
That's good.
And it took me, and it takes a lot of people starting their recovery before they can even form a relationship with God, because a lot of people in addiction either don't believe in or gave up on. So it's a good way to start.
That's good. I like that. What a beautiful testimony.
Thank you.
I love that. A couple of things that I like. First of all, back to the cussing. I think it is really hard. I struggle with that too. I work in a prison. I'm surrounded by people who are cussing 24/7. I've been in corrections for 13 years. And it's like, that's just been a way of life for so long that
Yeah.
it is really hard. And like, you know, I don't necessarily like music that has cuss words in it because I just don't necessarily like that music. You know, I'm a big like country person.
Oh, yeah.
And I really do like Christian music. But the kids love the music that has bad words in it. And I'm like, the beat is catchy.
Yeah.
I can't always understand what the words are saying.
Yeah.
But the beat is catchy. But then I think about like what the song is singing about. And I'm like, this is a terrible message. Like that we are like singing about and that
It
we are
is.
manifesting, or, you know, that we're just idolizing in our life or in our kids' life. And like, so for us, like and I think about it more, like the kids, you know, are at this point 18, 15, and 3. Well, my 18 and 15-year-old, no, they're not supposed to be cussing, you know, but the 3-year-old, he doesn't understand that. You know, you can't
Yeah.
just be like, oh, well, you heard it in the song, but you can't say it. You know, he doesn't get
Right.
that. And so, like, it has been, like, more prevalent. But, like, I don't let the kids listen to, like, stuff that has bad language in my car. And sometimes one of them will put something on, and it doesn't even have cuss words, but the message of the
Yes.
song. I'm like, what? Why are you singing this? Like, you got to turn this. This is not good. Like, but I'm that kind of person that, like, I will, like, take in everything that's around me. And so if I'm, like, around people who are cussing, it's like I'm just naturally like, it's just a way of life. And
Yeah.
so like for me, I just have to be like, no, I can't listen to music like that. And like, even I love like cop shows, The Rookie, Criminal Minds.
Oh, yeah.
The new Criminal Minds, the language is terrible. Like I
Really?
stopped watching it the other day because I felt convicted about it, because I was like, why do they have to talk like this? They don't have to talk like that. They can get their point across without that. But it's like, it's just such a common part of our lifestyles that it makes it really difficult.
Yeah, and so I've listened to this podcast. He talks about the way your brain works and how it's like emotional addiction, and you're like, it's like walking through a field of grass and you walk the same path every time you create a trail. You do the same thing in your brain. And so like
Oh,
your
that's
brain
good.
actually automatically goes that way. So when I get mad, I automatically go to the cussing because that's the easy way, instead of like the way I should do it is like stop and like,
Right.
you know, take a breath and go to God. But of course I don't. I let my
good.
mouth fly.
I love the way that that's like worded too, because I've never really thought about it like that. But it is true. And then afterwards, I'm like, why was I acting like a toddler in that situation? Like, it's like I didn't take time and like think through my thoughts or like abide in Him,
Yeah.
you know, through that whole thing. So I think that's really good.
I did that well, it's been a while back, but something happened at work and I was in the bathroom and I was like giving myself a pep talk. And I was like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to say this and I'm going to do that and I'm going to do this. And I was washing my hands and I looked in the mirror and I was like, yeah, no, you're not. And it was just like immediately I was
Right.
like, talk myself up and then completely out of it because I know I'm trying to be better. And then, and I hate saying this but I use it as an excuse. But I'm like, people bring the worst out in me. If there wasn't so many people doing dumb stuff, then I wouldn't. But I can't use that as an excuse
Right.
because I can make an excuse for everything. I had excuses for why I was drinking. I had a good day. I had a bad day. Somebody made me mad. You know, like there was always something.
Right.
I didn't need a reason, but I always had one just in case.
Right.
So, but I need to use that to, and sticking with these things that I'm learning, you know, and they say like the one is like for 3 days do this, and then it'll become a normal, you know, and I started falling out of it, and I was talking to my buddy, the one in prison, and I was like, bro, I'm struggling, and he's like, where are you at with your podcasts? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, exactly.
Really good question.
He said, looks like you need to start back over from the beginning. And so that's what I had to do. And when you have an off day, it throws your routine off. I've had some of those off days and it threw my routine off. And so, talking about it again right now, like I did it this morning, but I need to do it again, and it's talking to yourself positive, because the podcast I was talking about negative self-talk. And, because like I'm horrible to myself. And it's like, replace the bad with the good, like I'm like, instead of saying like I'm an idiot, like, oh, I'm a human being, I messed up, next time I'm going to, and try to like, and it even says to write them down and then reflect on it at night to see like what you said to yourself, how you stopped yourself, what you replaced
That's
it with. And so, but it's like time consuming.
Right. I don't know about for you, but like this kind of seems similar. But for me, it's been really helpful for me to like, I don't remember where I got this from or who taught me this or told me this, but it was like you have the power, like when a thought comes in your head, to be like, is this from God or is this congruent with what the Word says about me or what God says about me? Because sometimes we get this inner talk and it's like, your parents or a coworker who talked down to you, or it's like other people that we have put in our head and we've almost made them like an emotional board of directors in our head. And it's like, you need an eviction notice from up there.
Yeah.
Like, okay, yes, my parents told me that and it is congruent with what Scripture says. I can hold on to that. It's what my parents told me and that's not congruent with what the Word says. Then it's time to go. And I use your parents because it does seem like most parents are kind of that inner voice that has like started in your head that as you get older, you still kind of keep, something happens and you're like, why did you do that? Well, I don't know. My mom always said you're supposed to do that, and it's just programmed in up here. And, we don't really understand why or how, but it's just what we've heard. And so it's there. And so it's kind of like thinking about who is on your emotional board of directors. Because there really shouldn't be many people up there, and we give that power away, If something comes in, then we've got the choice to be like, okay, that is congruent with Scripture, or no, like I'm not an idiot. Like I feel like it in this moment, but that's not something I need to hold on to because it's not congruent with what Scripture says. Nowhere in here does it say that about me.
Yeah.
It says all kinds of other things. I'm chosen, I'm beloved, like all of these other things. But that's not it. So, like, that's got to go. Time to get an eviction notice. Sorry, evicting people off that board. And so that kind of, like, I guess that probably kind of goes to this other question that I wrote down. But how do you, like, work through or combat the intrusive thoughts that like still come in, like when you are having like a bad day or you see somebody drinking or you see somebody doing something or whenever the thoughts like come back in your life, how do you protect yourself from that or turn them off?
So that happened recently. I was having a day of negativity of like person that I seen, it was just like I had negative thoughts. And it was a whole day, and it wasn't until my way home from work, and I kept telling myself, like, stop. Like, I was literally talking to myself, like, stop thinking that, stop acting like that. And I was driving down the road on my way home, and I just turned off the music, and I was just like, God, please stop. Help me stop. Help these thoughts. Stop these thoughts from coming into my head, or help me to not see the negative in it, but see the positive in it. And so then after I was listening to the one podcast, there was another one that followed it, and it was all about giving it to God and not taking over. And I was
That's
like,
awesome.
okay, so if I put out good, then I get good back, you know? And it's like, so what I have, like, even on the drinking side, like I said, I don't even have any cravings,
That's
thankfully.
awesome.
But if I do have the thought, I just immediately go to, where's that going to lead? It's going to lead down the bad path. But if I could remember to take it to God as soon as it happens, those negative thoughts, then I'd be a lot happier. But sometimes I let them stew in my brain, because it's almost like it's back to the emotional addiction, and it's the easy way
Right.
to go about my life. But if I stop and I pray, I found that that's the one thing that, of course, always brings me back and just like puts a smile on my face, and then I can laugh at myself, because I'll look at myself in the mirror a lot, just because I'm like, I'll give myself like the eyebrow look, like, really, bro, come on. And then so like after I had that bad day, like I looked in the mirror and I was just like and I laughed, you know, because it's like
That's
I have
funny.
to laugh about
Yeah.
it, you know, because it's like you want to be fixed overnight, and you want to be like happy, joyous, free all the time, but that's not the way life works.
Do you know who Lisa Harper is?
I don't.
She is like a Bible teacher. She travels around the country. She does a lot of like Bible studies and stuff. She's hilarious though. Like, she really teaches with a very like humorous side. And she was telling a story about her and her daughter. And her daughter is, I think, 16 now or somewhere around there. And they were on their way, I guess, to school. They were on their way to something. I think school, because she was like studying for a test or something. Her daughter does not like the mornings, and she loves the mornings. And so there's always like that conflict. And it seems like all the stories she tells is like this conflict in the morning. And so, but anyhow, her daughter said something sarcastic, and she, you know, kind of got onto her, and the daughter, and she was like, but if you're going to say something sarcastic, say it loud enough so that, you know, I can hear what you have to say.
Yeah.
And so she said it again. She's like, well, I was kind of backed into a corner at that point, and so I didn't know what to do. So I just took her sausage biscuit and chucked it out the window. And she said, like, in 30 minutes, like, after everybody was, like, gasping, like, I cannot believe you just did that. Then, like, humor entered the situation, and it was like they were able to laugh about it, and, like, she ended up giving her biscuit. But I'm like, isn't that so real? Because it's like, why do we get so upset that we do something so stupid?
Yeah.
And then it's like, why did I do that? I don't know.
And then it's horrible because, like, especially like in recovery, like, you're supposed to, you know, do your daily inventory and, you know, make amends right away. Don't let them go for days.
Fester.
And it's like, sometimes I'll do something and I'm like, how I have to go apologize right away. Like, if I would have just thought this through, you know, and that's what they talk about too in recovery, is playing the tape through. You know, like, if you want to drink or go get high, play the tape through. What's going to happen? You're going to lose everything again. Everything's going to be back to the way it was. Or you can just not. And that's what I have to do in my daily life sometimes, is just like, but sometimes it's, things happen so fast.
Right.
And my mouth takes off, and then I'm like, man, what did I just do?
Like, it'd been easier to not do this.
Yeah.
Now I have to apologize.
And you know, sometimes going into a situation that there's going to be some conflict or some backlash, or there's going to be like,
Right.
tempers are going to get, you know, involved, and then next thing you know, like, there's my mouth. And I'm so good at like talking crap, and like I'm very quick-witted.
Right.
I always have something to say. And sometimes it's hilarious and it's on time, and sometimes it's like the old me, it would have been perfect, but I'm not trying to be that person.
Right.
So it's like those old habits are so quick to just they're right there.
Well, and it's kind of like a fine line because like there's still times where, and you know I can't relate on some level, but I can relate on another level because I feel like I have the funniest things in my head to say, and I'm like, now is not the appropriate time. But I really want to tell you this, you know, and so it's like sometimes it's like, oh, but I want you to know, like you have to laugh at this. It's funny,
Yeah.
and like sometimes might think it's funny, and sometimes they may not think it's funny.
Well, I usually have a divided room. You know, some people are like, "Oh yes," and then
Yeah.
other people are like, "You what?"
Yeah.
And but the humor, I mean, I find that's like my go-to. It's always been my go-to. The guy at work is like, my buddy at work, he was like, you got to do a comedy routine. And I was like, but I'm more of like I need things to happen.
Right, like
You know?
that's how I am.
Yes.
But when something happens, I'm like, they cannot be serious.
Yeah.
You know, so now I have like things to say about it.
Well, and like the whole like video thing. You know, my sister, when I was drinking, she's like, you need to be TikToking. And I was like, but I would need somebody to follow me around with a camera 24/7. Because I even told my buddy at work, because we were talking about doing TikTok videos, and I was like, it would be great, but when I say something on the
Right.
fly, it's hilarious. But then if I try to reenact it, it's not.
I was actually just
loses
thinking about
its-
that this morning because I was like, I love like interacting, like when people say things or people do something, like I love having something to say about
Yeah.
it. Like it is funny. But then it's like, but like I couldn't do comedy because I can't write a joke. Like it just
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, I have a thought about this.
Yeah.
You know, so I can relate to a part of that. If we're kind of running out of time
Oh,
here,
okay.
but if you could give one piece of advice to anybody, and maybe it's to people in recovery, maybe it's just anybody listening, what would it be?
Wow, that's a tough one.
I know, I'm so sorry. Put you on the spot like that.
Don't lose faith.
That's
Don't
good.
lose hope.
Good.
That's a saying in recovery, like don't quit before the miracle. Because especially like in recovery, you put yourself into a lifestyle that you never thought you could come out of,
Right.
and you never seen a light. And then, having a little bit of time under my belt, I can see things happening and why they're happening and how they're happening, and I see it happening in other people's lives, and it's all just not giving up. So don't give
That's
up.
good. Have you ever wondered, maybe this is just me, but have you ever wondered how many people's story are not in the Bible that could have been in the Bible, but they quit before the miracle,
Yeah.
where they weren't willing to like the lady with an issue of blood, like she was willing to go out of her comfort zone to touch him. How many people wanted that,
Right.
but didn't have the faith or the desire or the passion to do it?
Yeah.
Or just like when he asked the man at the pool of Bethesda, he asked the man that he was getting ready to heal after he had been like sick for like 38 years. He said, "Do you want to be well?" Like, how many people did he ask that to?
Yeah.
That didn't give him a solid answer,
Right.
or didn't want that. So it's like, I love that. I wrote that down. Don't quit before the miracle. That's so good.
It is good.
Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for
I
having
really
me.
appreciate it. We'll close
Yes.
out with a prayer.
All right.
Father, we thank you for this time that you've given us, and this time you've given us to just to sit and to listen to his testimony, Father. And I just know that it's gonna reach so many people, and I'm so thankful that you allowed him to come tonight and that you were able to orchestrate all of this. Father, we thank you for this. I ask for a safe journey home. In your son's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.